So I just want to say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Changemaker20. It's definitely been a while since we've had one of these, as we've opened doors to pave way for important conversations in the world of anti-racism and lasting systemic change. Although I still am glad to be back. As always, I want to thank you for spending your afternoons with us. And if this is your first time, this is a platform where we do get to chat with our subject matter experts in an open forum for all of you to ask questions and speak to them directly. And I know you guys might be checking on Facebook, but that doesn't mean that you guys can't also participate in the conversation. So definitely leave your questions down below on either chats, and we'll make sure we get to you guys. Today, we have Lisa Taylor. Lisa is a sought-after expert in helping companies recognize and adapt to changing career timelines and demographic composition. Lisa's expertise is widely recognized and regularly cited in many North American media sources, including the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, CBC, and Rogers. She also recently published a book called The Talent Revolution that you guys should definitely check out after this. Lisa was also recognized by the Urban Land Institute as one of Canada's top 100 women in 2014 for her work in leadership, employment, and city building. Now, the last time we had Lisa, we spoke about how everybody is experiencing career disruption. For some, not much has changed on the surface. Day-to-day duties and activities remain the same, even as workplaces have shifted to dining rooms. For others, all bets are off and daily routines are out the window. I am on that boat. So are we able to take ownership of how we'll navigate through this upheaval and change, or are some destined to find equilibrium while others remain off-kilter for months and years to come? Now, this is a continuation of that conversation we did have on May 29th. So maybe, Lisa, we can start with what's changed or evolved from then and now.
Yeah, it is kind of an ongoing story. And I think that that's actually a really good way to take a look at it, that our careers are lifelong. And what we're experiencing right now is a shock, is a moment in time, but it will also inform how we're going to navigate for a long period of time, not just the next couple of weeks or to get past this period. So taking a longer term horizon, my team actually has been using a group technique that once every 2 weeks at the end of the week, we get together and we have what we call a noticing circle. So we don't share new knowledge that we've learned or something that we know for sure. Instead, what we do is we just get together and we share, what have we noticed? What are new themes that are emerging that weren't the kinds of things people were talking about before? What questions have come up? And we've kind of marked the pandemic and the way people are responding to it through phases based on the themes that we've noticed. So a few weeks ago, back when we had our initial conversation, Daniel, we were really in the midst of a time when we could capture what people were feeling as being tired. There was a lot of fatigue. People were feeling exhausted and a little bit fed up with everything. And I would say that we haven't necessarily left that time of fatigue, but we've moved into a new phase where we've started to notice that people are finding it really challenging to make decisions. So even simple decisions, in every case, and then to the most complex decision, like what should I do for my future employment? Anything that requires us to make a decision is not easy at the moment. And there's all kinds of reasons why that is. We've done some research and built up some tools to try to explain why is this moment in time both at the same time tiring and really hard for people that are usually quite decisive to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. And we actually just recently had psychologists come in and talk to us about the difficulty in decision making. But I'd love to hear your perspective as someone who works with corporations and individuals on the future of work on what are some of the more difficult decisions people are making and how can they make them easier?
So I really like a philosopher's approach, Dr. McLaughlin, who says that really the reason that it's hard to make decisions at this moment in time is because we're living in an era of moral uncertainty. So it's hard to know what the right decision is, or if there is a right decision, or maybe there actually is no right decision or good decision, and we have to make choices that are the best that we can do. Mm-hmm. We're not used to having to make those kinds of choices on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. And so it really comes down to, if we can't know that we're actually making the right choice or we're avoiding risk by choosing an option, what's the value that as long as we stay true to that value, we will feel like we've made the best decision that we possibly can. And so Dr. McLaughlin's a philosopher, and so it's not surprising that she goes back to values. But I think that it ties really strongly into the way that we work with executive teams and leadership teams. And that is to say, values-based leadership is actually a very strong way to help any team navigate into the future of work. The future of work has always been uncertain. There's always risks. There's always questions that we ask and we don't have set answers for, and we still need to decide, do you send someone on that training course or not? Do you close down that division or not? Do you invest in that technology or not? The outcome is always risky, and the fact that now anchoring in values would be useful is just an echo of what has always been true, where really understanding the core values of your company and what it is that you're going to stay true to as you navigate really, really challenging decisions is a good method to keep your team together.
I find it so interesting because you have such different lenses that you guys are looking from, but you guys come to a very similar conclusion. So I find that very cool.
We should talk together sometime.
Definitely, I'd love to put that together. Last time we spoke, I remember you outlined what the 5 drivers of change in work are. Can you maybe outline them again, and maybe how a person can look at them, outline their own life where they are, and use that to equip themselves for where the future of work is going?
We look at the future of work and use the 5 drivers as lenses to understand what's happening, to make sure that we're looking at the entire picture. That we're not missing a piece of something or jumping to a quick conclusion when really there's more to the story.
Mm-hmm.
So the 5 drivers are demographics, including longevity, but demographic change in the workplace, career ownership, which is the relationship and power dynamic of employer to employee, who owns career, who's in charge, and who's in the following position. The 3rd dynamic is the impact of the freelance or gig economy. The 4th is the use of platform-based business models. Where are there platforms emerging that completely transform the way that business is done?
Mm-hmm.
And then the 5th is AI, robotics, cryptocurrency, all of the technologies. Mm-hmm. And usually in future of work discussions, I might have said this in our last conversation, if you're at a conference and someone says, let me tell you the 10 trends of the future of work, at least 8 of them are going to be technology based, and then maybe there'll be a small nod to something human at the end of their list.
Mm-hmm.
And our approach to the future of work is to say the future of work is human. If we want to talk about the future of technology, we can talk about the future of technology. It's a really important discussion. Mm-hmm. But if we actually want to get at the future of work, we need to be focusing on what's the impact on humans at work of whatever the subject is that we're looking at. So I'll give you a practical example. Right now, people are looking at the shift to working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen an enormous amount of the discussion be focused on real estate and leases and long-term agreements, and Shopify is letting go of all of its buildings and all of these things. That's a little like the technology discussion. Mm-hmm. So real estate is not the human effort or energy. It's focused on what's happening in workplaces. If we actually want to take a look at the lasting effect of remote work, we would look at it and we would say, from a demographic perspective, who's fared well in this last number of weeks and months? Where does remote work actually amplify the ability of certain demographic groups, certain cohorts within our workforce to be more productive? And who's falling behind? Who's left out? Or from a career ownership perspective, how does remote work contribute to a stronger balance or a stronger sense of employees owning their own careers compared to employers holding all of the cards? And if you're a manager and now you have to manage a remote workforce, where has that balance of power shifted in terms of how you relate to what you need to get done, but your workforce is not under your control, under your thumb every minute of the day? The freelance and gig economy can be looked at from that lens of remote work, platforms that are emerging to enable different ways of engaging with labor and remote work. And then finally, the tools like Zoom, Facebook Live, like all of the technologies that actually enable us to work remotely. So that remote work often gets cast as like a single issue, but if we look at it through all the lenses, we can see it's actually quite complex. And if I was a leader having to make a decision about what the right balance is going to be going forward, I wouldn't want to just base it on, well, we've proven that this is capable. We want to break that down and understand what are the impacts.
Mm-hmm. So then maybe looking at it through the lens of the individual, looking at it from someone who feels threatened by the advancement of technology or AI, or if they're in the business of real estate, how should they approach their next steps as they feel that their walls are slowly closing in?
Yeah, this fear that technology is going to take over all the jobs is not new. And it's not caused by the pandemic. It's not something that's happened in the last 10 years or 20 years. For decades and decades, actually almost a century, there's been stories that have written that new machines are going to displace all of the workers. And I think common wisdom now says that this is fairly well known, that technology is going to continue to advance. We need to take a continuous improvement approach to how we think about our careers, that we continuously improve as people, and our jobs and the work that we do continuously improves as well in the value that we're able to provide. But what is changing is just the rapid pace.
Mm-hmm.
So it's true that technology has displaced workforces before, but there was a fairly long runway in order for people to see that change coming, prepare for it, pivot, and then move forward. It's not to say there weren't huge populations that were left behind, but we had a bit of a longer runway. Now, with the speed that technology is being adopted, there's this perception that we're out of time. So in that vein, what I would say to individuals is, it's true that new technologies are being invented all the time. But if you actually take a look at how quickly industries pivot and change because of technology innovation, it's slow. So just because a technology exists doesn't mean that it's going to completely disrupt your workplace in the coming weeks or months. Look at driverless vehicles as a great example. We've had driverless vehicles for a really long time, and we could implement them as a standard. There's a couple of reasons why they're not being implemented. And I think it's important for individuals, for leaders, for everyone to just recognize that just because a technology exists doesn't mean it needs to be used. We need to figure out how we're going to harness that technology so as humans, we accomplish more. And that's the right time to start to introduce the technologies. And we've seen that. We've seen the way that government and policy steps in to help to make sure we don't leave people behind.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember a discussion in 2016 of driverless trucks,
right,
which could have potentially put 300,000 people out of work.
Massive impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, massive.
But still not being implemented to this day, which you were saying. And so, as a proactive person, just anybody, how do they then determine which skill sets they really need to, emphasize and learn and to really just research more, because there's such a long list? So, what it would be your guideline that you could follow?
I think that it's really important that there are certain skills that do make you more competitive in today's workforce. Now, whether those are going to be the same skills that you're going to need 10 years from now, I don't have a strong, I can't tell you that those skills are actually enduring, that if you learn this, you're set for life, for the rest of your life. And I think that gives a clue to what individuals need to be focused on. I think if you take an approach that has continuous improvement in mind, where you're planning where you want to go and you're taking small actions to see what happens, and then you're checking to see, was I successful? And then you're setting out on a path before you start your next plan. You're continuously working on where you're going to continue to evolve your career. I think that'll help. And the core skill in that is being curious and being able to see continuous improvement, continuous evolution, as opposed to looking for, listen, Lisa, just tell me, if I learn these 3 skills in this one computer program, am I going to have a job? I think that mindset is actually, so if we're looking at skills, that mindset and overcoming that mindset that if I just do these 2 things, I'll be safe, that's a skill that we need to develop so that we can overcome uncertainty and know what's our worth, what's our value, what's the labor market information around us, and how do we make good career choices. That's taking ownership of our own careers.
But it isn't just the individuals as well. I think corporations are also scrambling to determine how to hire the right people during these times also. And so what lens are they looking at? What skill sets? And there isn't a one answer for it, but what do you think they are transitioning to, looking for more towards in each employee that they potentially hire?
It's an interesting moment to talk about recruitment and hiring. Typically people hire people that they feel comfortable around. And, this is certainly a moment in time when we are surfacing and celebrating diversity and in really raising the problem of only hiring people that think like you, look like you, have the same background as you. It may be that you have a fantastic rapport in your interview, but is that actually the right skill set and the right person, or is there systemic barriers and bias that's impacting who gets in and who gets out? So I think from that lens, because that is something that is so top of mind and topical at the moment and important, it actually calls into question the entire act of how we hire. So not just to address how can we be more inclusive and break down systemic barriers, but why are we asking what we're asking of anybody? And what do we actually need when we are looking for someone in this particular role? I'll use an example, someone might say, we've always required a bachelor's degree for that particular job. Well, that job really doesn't require someone to have attended a university to go through a program that has nothing to do with our industry in order to do that job well. So this is where I think we're in this kind of really cusp moment for recruitment, where anyone that's in a position to hire, there's nothing that's left on the table that needs to stay the way that it was because it's the way we've always done it. It's a great moment to be asking questions.
That's right. And so maybe to kind of leave everybody off, because 18 minutes has already gone by, which is insane to me how fast these go. But maybe to leave everyone off, what can everyone start doing today to help them prepare for the transition of work now and the future of work?
I think taking ownership. I think recognizing that you are an actor in what's going to happen to you, that sometimes it feels like we're a bit player or a victim of someone else's decisions. But you actually can make decisions. You can get resources and supports. You can advance yourself in different ways, easier now than ever before, to be able to take control over your own future and your own career. But you can only do that if you know what you want. Mm-hmm. So no one is going to define for you what a sweet spot career looks like for you. You need to be able to articulate, this is what I'm looking for. Here's how it maps to my talents. I care about this for these reasons. The job has to meet these needs, and here's the market for it. And that's work that every individual needs to do for themselves or with support. But that's our job. That is, as owner of my own career, that's my job.
It's so interesting, the contrast between this conversation and the last one. And so for everyone who wants to check that out, it's on our YouTube channel at Talk Boutique. Definitely check it out, because we cover such a variety of different approaches and lenses to look at the future of work. I just want to thank you, Lisa, for today. And thank you for everyone who tuned in to our Changemaker20. These 20 minutes always fly by when you're having a very interesting conversation. But if you do have any future questions or would like to work with Lisa or have her speak at one of your upcoming events, you can definitely shoot me an email, and I'd love to help get you connected. We'll also be continuing our courageous conversations tomorrow with John and Chika Ariua. Chika has a phenomenal story of starting as the only Black medical student in her class, to starting an initiative to change that, and eventually becoming the first ever Black valedictorian in U of T history, which is an incredible feat. As well as continuing our sense-making virtual speaker series, such a long name, with Anne Makosinski, who is an acclaimed inventor, global inspirational keynote speaker, and a driving creative force in the green energy field. Her current invention is a line of eco-friendly children's toys that's powered by green energy, which is very, very cool. And so once again, I want to say thank you, Lisa, for coming in today. And for everybody at home, stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, and have a great week. Talk soon.
Thanks, Daniel.